This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate. This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Esta es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
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 Este es el Senado Estatal de California.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
This is the California State Senate.
Thank you all for taking the time to be here. On behalf of the County of Humboldt, the Humboldt County Office of Education, and of course, the Surgeon General, we want to say how grateful we are that all of you have gathered on such a critical conversation on childhood trauma and abuse here in Humboldt County and the North Coast. My name is Mike McGuire. I'm honored to be able to work with you each and every day in the State Senate, and we're here to talk about the health of our kids in our community. And we're here to be able to talk about the progress that's being made together to build resilience and to prevent childhood trauma in what we now call adverse childhood experiences, or ACEs. And frankly, we are here to talk about what still needs to be done and what challenges we still face as a community in addressing this public health crisis. Humboldt County and the North Coast has some of the highest levels of ACEs in the Golden State. It's generational and it's debilitating. Research shows that negative experiences that happen early in the lives lives of our kids, such as physical, verbal, or sexual abuse, drug and alcohol use in the home, and homelessness, can and do have lifelong negative consequences for that person. For example, a person who experiences ACEs as a kid may very well witness enhanced levels of chronic disease, a violent behavior, enhanced domestic violence and drug use rates, and higher suicide rates as an adult. Humboldt County's countywide effort to combat ACEs kicked off 3 years ago. And I think we need to take a moment to give thanks. To give thanks to First Five Humboldt, particularly Executive Director Mary Ann Hansen and her team, who have spearheaded, give a round of applause. If you know Mary Ann, you do not want to get in her way. First Five Humboldt has spearheaded a countywide initiative to break the ACEs cycle, and to provide kids and their families with resources they need to thrive. And we are so grateful to be able to partner with her. One more round of applause, please. As many of you know, this is our third town hall on adverse childhood experiences. Together with First Five Humboldt, we met in 2017 to bring awareness and launch a new initiative to prevent and mitigate the impact of ACEs on residents here on the North Coast. We came back together to be able to provide a status update on how the community initiative was gaining traction in 2018, thanks to many of you who are here tonight. And now we are here this evening to report back to all of you on what's happening locally as well as statewide. And we are so excited to have California's new Surgeon General in the House, ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, everybody. A recent study showed that Humboldt County has some of the highest rates of ACEs in California. Here in Humboldt, we have more than 70% of people who were part of the study. They reported that they had at least one ACE. Humboldt County has a higher rate of reported child abuse and neglect than California as a whole. And we have a higher percentage of reports of sexual abuse with kids than California as a whole. So that's why we are back here tonight. And we are here in overwhelming numbers. We're here with First Five Humboldt, the state of California, tribal leaders from throughout the North Coast, governmental leaders in the county of Humboldt to team up on several critical initiatives, and we are moving important generational work forward together to support our kids in our community. And we know that our work is far from done. We have some celebration, though, tonight. Humboldt County, thanks to the Board of Supervisors, is now investing $1.2 million to be able to reduce ACEs and partnering with nonprofits in every corner of this county. Humboldt school, county, and clinic employees are now receiving trauma-informed training to better support our youth. And $1.7 million in state funds are now being invested to provide treatment and services to women and moms who have substance use disorders to stem the generational impacts of ACEs. And this has all happened in the last 3 years. And here's a big one. The state has finally stepped up as well. The legislature passed groundbreaking Assembly Bill 340 to implement mandated trauma screening to all kids who are on Medi-Cal. And the state budget this year included $90 million to reimburse and train doctors in every corner of this state on screening for ACEs under this new law, and it's about damn time. Am I right? And we need to give credit where credit is due. If it wasn't for this woman to my right, our new Surgeon General, this would not have happened. And by screening for ACEs, We know now that doctors are going to better determine the likelihood that a patient is at increased health risk, as early identification of trauma and providing trauma-informed care and intervention are critical tools to stem this generational crisis. Finally, we are so grateful that Dr. Nadine Burke is here. You're going to hear from her in just a bit. And you're also going to hear from a local panel of experts from our own community. From tribal leaders, to schools, to clinics, to the county, they're all going to be talking about where they are focused on all issues of ACEs and how Humboldt County is addressing the issue. But first, I'd like to be able to bring up our partner here tonight. Her name is Mary Ann Hansen. She's the Executive Director of First 5 Humboldt. Whether you are in the main room or the overflow room, let's give loud and proud Mary Ann a round of applause.
So I want to say, first off, welcome, and then also I want you to look around the room, because this is our Humboldt Coalition on behalf of the children in our county. It is a powerful, diverse, and change-making group that I believe will continue to make the change. So give yourselves a hand, because you are our change makers. I need to give you a little report out about what we've been doing, and I need to do a little bit of framing of that. So I'm going to talk a little bit about First 5's work, but this is only a small piece of the pie of all the work that's going on in the community. Many of you here tonight are doing the kind of work that we need in our community, which is supporting families and working on prevention and becoming trauma-informed and providing trauma-informed services. So for First 5 Humboldt, our little piece of the pie is focused on promoting resilience factors, preventing ACEs, and incorporating trauma-responsive practices. And then in this last year, with the passage of AB 340 and some of the fantastic work that Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris is doing, we've also begun to work more and more with our clinics locally around trauma-informed care and getting ready for screening to roll out. There we go. Our work is framed around promoting the protective factors, which are shown to reduce child abuse and neglect, but they're also important for the social determinants of health. So one of the things we know is that when families don't have social connections, they don't have concrete support in times of need, they don't understand their child's development, it can lead to frustration. The social emotional competence of children also is an important factor in preventing child abuse and neglect, and parental resilience. And so our work focuses around these pieces, right? We're in the business of prevention, and so I'm going to say a little bit more too about the ways that we do that. As Senator McGuire mentioned, the County of Humboldt made a commitment 3 years ago, and it was because people like you showed up at the budget meeting. How many of you showed up at the budget meeting 3 years ago where they wanted to know about how they should spend their money? I see a couple hands, and I think I want to shout out to you because, yes, they're county supervisors too, because the supervisors heard that and they made an ongoing commitment to prevent ACEs and promote resilience and put forward trauma-informed care in our county. And so we're now at $1.2 million invested, and we have, more than half of that money going out in community grants to nonprofits, including mental health consultation for families, foster parent coaching, behavioral health support in schools, developmental screening, and support for a school-based health clinic. So that money that the Board of Soups has allocated has gone right back out to the community in direct services. First 5 Humboldt has been able to garner $460,000 in Health Foundation support to coordinate community ACEs projects. We offered a 3-day conference for more than 300 people, showed up in June. How many of you were at that conference? Yeah, you're my people, right? This is, actually you're all my people, but more than 300 people showed up in June, and we're going to be able to do that conference again. And that conference was called Counting on Community, and it was about trauma-informed practices and making sure that we were acknowledging the many sources of wisdom that can make children's lives better. And we've, as the Senator mentioned, we're awarded a $1.7 million grant from the Office of Child Abuse child abuse prevention, focused on providing supports to Kamau Medical Clinic, UIHS, and the Karuk Clinic in Orleans to support moms who are impacted by substance use disorder. And I have to acknowledge our local foundations that have also provided community support and grants to nonprofits. First Five Humboldt in the last year had 15,000 visits to our playgroups, where we provide supportive services by early childhood mental health specialists. And our research shows that if someone talks to a specialist at playgroup, the parents report feeling less stress. They feel like they know more about their child's development. They know more about how to respond to their children. They also feel like they know where to get resources in the community, and they are also more likely to feel like they have someone to talk to when they're feeling stress. These are free programs available. We have 22 of them, from a new one opening up in Oric soon over to Orleans, Southern Humboldt, and Honeydew, Petrolia, et cetera. They're free, they're accessible, families come, and they get some support, and they're able to connect with one another and build their social network so that they can support one another and learn a little bit more about their children. And I feel like that's an amazing and preventative service that's going on in our community. If you think about 15,000 visits in little tiny Humboldt last year. 4,000 children and 2,500 parents were served by ACES grants in the first 2 years. So that money that I talked about that the county has invested has gone back out to serve a lot of children in our community. We've been training. I have to call out our program coordinator, Danielle Anderson, our ACES coordinator. If any of you know her, she's amazing. And she's been helping us coordinate with a speakers bureau who go out to schools and clinics and community groups to train on adverse childhood experiences and trauma-informed practices. And then I want to call out Humboldt County's commitment in a systems way. So the County of Humboldt has included ACEs prevention, trauma-informed care, and resilience promotion in their strategic plan. We have at least a couple of our Board of Supervisors here, and I want to acknowledge them and thank them for their work. Without them, we wouldn't be able to be moving this forward. So I see Mike Wilson there. Yay, Mike. And Supervisor Virginia Bass in the back as well. Thank you both for being here. In addition, the Board of Supervisors has identified ACEs and ACEs prevention, trauma-informed care, resilience promotion, and their legislative platform. So they're working in county, and they're also working upwards, right, to influence this policy at the state level. The ACEs movement has become part of the community health improvement planning through public health, so that it's one of the areas in which the public health is focusing on. Improving, understanding that ACEs is really instrumental in improving the long-term health outcomes of our community. It's become part of the Humboldt Community Health Trust goals. So they have a bunch of intervention strategies that they are looking at to improve county health, and ACEs is one of those. The county has, as I said, allocated general funds towards ACEs. We recently, how many of you were able to see the documentary Addicts Among Us? I see a few hands. So linking ACEs with the health risks associated with substance use disorder. The CARE network in Humboldt County has identified Hannah, who's up here in the front, a prenatal substance use disorder navigator working with pregnant moms. And we've got our annual Counting on Community symposium, and we're only getting started, right? When we came together 3 years ago, some of you might have been there, or some of you, yeah, and the fire marshal was called. You guys remember? And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. The people in our office are not the only ones. My coworkers aren't the only ones. The other teachers I know aren't the only ones. This is a community issue. We all care about our children. We all recognize that ACEs is the greatest public health crisis that we face in Humboldt County. And if we want to break this intergenerational cycle, we need to support our families. We need to support our children. We need to support the caregivers and teachers and doctors that work with them, because secondary trauma is a thing. And we are the ones that can make a difference. Someone said to me, why are you bringing a legislator here to talk about this? We just need to do something. Well, we can marshal our resources here, but we also need to ask our state to support our work, right? So I'm asking you, I'm challenging you to think about what can you do to support your community? What can you do to reach out to your neighbor? What can you do to ask your teacher, what's your school doing about ACEs? Can you ask your doctor? How has my childhood experience impacted my current health? Right? Each one of us has a piece in this puzzle. So I know that you really want to hear from Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, right? She's our rock star that's here. So I want to thank you for being here, and I look forward to working with you in the future. Thanks.
This is an amazing turnout tonight. I guarantee you there is no other community, no other county that will turn out in such big numbers for the betterment of our kids. And on behalf of all of us, we want to say thank you, and this is why we are going to be successful to bring generational change here in Humboldt County and the North Coast. And we are so excited to be able to have California's first Surgeon General with us this evening. Her name is Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. Not only is she an award-winning physician, she's a researcher, she's a self-proclaimed science nerd, she is an advocate dedicated to changing the way our society responds to one of the most serious, expensive, and widespread public health crises of our time, and that's childhood trauma. And she's an amazing mom and pediatrician. Ladies and gentlemen, I want everybody up on their feet. I don't care where you're at. Let's give it up. She's appointed as California's first Surgeon General.
Dang! Thank you! Oh my! I'm incredibly honored. Thank you, Senator McGuire. I'm going to have you come to my house and announce me when I walk in the door every evening. Thank you, Marianne, and for the incredible work that you all are doing here in Humboldt, and to all of our panelists this evening. And for me, most of all, thanks to all of you for being here tonight, because this is how we break the intergenerational cycle. We do it in community, and we do it by showing up and having this conversation and talking about these challenges. And as we begin this conversation, I want to start by recognizing that when we're talking about adverse childhood experiences, right? This can be a difficult. Sorry, you can't hear me? The mic is that better? All right. So as we're talking about this conversation, and we're talking about adverse childhood experiences, that this can be a difficult and sometimes triggering conversation. So if anyone, I just want to, hold space that if anyone needs to step out or if anyone wants to take a moment, that, that's totally fine as we move into this conversation. But one thing I want to highlight is that I hope that this conversation is truly a hopeful one, because that's how I feel about this work. So as you all heard, earlier this year, I was appointed California's first Surgeon General, and I just want to highlight the executive order. So far, it's my favorite executive order that the governor has signed. And what it says is that, whereas California faces serious health challenges rooted in early social determinants of health, and whereas these challenges are not only serious but inequitable, disproportionately impacting low-income Californians and communities of color, and whereas Some of the most pernicious but least addressed health challenges are the upstream factors that eventually become chronic and acute conditions that are more difficult and more expensive to treat. It is hereby ordered, right, not only to create the role of the Surgeon General, but that the Surgeon General shall marshal the insights and the energy of the medical professionals, scientists, academic experts, public health experts, public servants, and everyday Californians to solve our most pressing health challenges, right? So that's pretty exciting because it's coming from our governor, my boss, and coming into the role as California's first Surgeon General, there were a couple of kind of really key priorities that, as my team sat down with the governor's office, and those really are health equity, early childhood, and ACEs and toxic stress. And as I work with my colleagues across the state, as you all likely, as I sense, know, really the work that we are doing on adverse childhood and experiences on toxic stress is truly, for me, feels absolutely transformational. And it is really nation-leading work. So judging by the look of the audience, it looks like most people are familiar with ACEs, but I'll go really, really quickly. Adverse childhood experiences include the 10 traditional categories, which include physical and emotional and sexual abuse, physical and emotional neglect, or growing up in a household where a parent was mentally ill, substance dependent, incarcerated, where there was parental separation or divorce or domestic violence, right? So those are the 10 traditional ACEs. Those were the 10 criteria that were studied by the CDC and Kaiser, where they saw these, really, really profound outcomes out of this landmark study. What they found were a couple of things that were really important. Number one, that ACEs are super common, right? And we know that. 2/3 of Californians, or 63.5%, have at least one ACE, and 17.6% of Californians have 4 or more ACEs, right? Here in Humboldt County, it's a little more than 30% of residents that have 4 or more ACEs. So we recognize that when we're talking about ACEs, we're not talking about some random things that happen to those people over there, right? We're talking about us, right? And it's a lot of us that are really affected. And we understand that for those of our neighbors who are struggling with lower income, that the rates, again, continue to be really quite high. We see that for folks who are making less than $15,000 a year, that their rate of ACEs is, of 4 or more ACEs, is roughly twice that than for folks who are making higher incomes. So we know that ACEs are really common. And the other thing that we recognize about ACEs is that the health impacts are real. So here's a list of the 10 leading causes of death in the United States of America. And having 4 or more ACEs significantly increases the risk for 9 out of 10 of the leading causes of death in the US, right? And that sounds scary. But the thing that I am here to say today is that ACEs are not destiny. So what that ACE study showed was that if you have ACEs, but we don't do anything, right? We don't implement these practices and policies, that we see really serious health outcomes. And the reason I am here today is to understand how we change those odds, right? Because that's what the research and the science is also showing us. And for me, as you heard, I am a self-confessed science nerd. So when I want to figure out how to change something, I do a deep dive into the biology. And let me just say, that's not just me, right? When we look at other public health crises, right? When we look at HIV/AIDS, once we figure it out, before, I mean, I don't know, there's some folks my age, and there's some young folks in the room who may not remember, but way back in the day, it was like HIV, right? You get it, and it seemed like, for many people, it was almost a death sentence, right? At the time, in the early 80s, the mean mortality from HIV was 6 months. So 50% of people died within 6 months of contracting disease. Now, on standard antiretroviral therapy, the life expectancy is greater than 50 years past diagnosis, right? And you know how we did that in 30 years. How did we do it? We did it by understanding the biology of what happens and using that biology to target solutions. And that's what we're going to do for ACEs. And so this is how it works, right? So we know, how does this whole thing work, right? So you're walking in a forest, there's lots of beautiful redwoods around here, you see this guy. Did I scare you? Even though, yeah, all right. Just a little bit, not too much, right? What happens? Immediately, right, our brain's fear center, our amygdala, sounds the alarm. And we release all these stress hormones in our brain and our body, right? Like adrenaline and cortisol. So our hearts start to pound. Our pupils dilate, our airways open up, and we are ready, right, to either fight that bear or run from the bear, right? Our body sends all this blood to our big muscles for running and jumping, and away from that itty-bitty muscle that holds your bladder closed so you might pee your pants. No judgment, right? But that's awesome, right? Because that's what you need to be able to fight that bear. But the problem is, if you were to think about it, fighting a bear wouldn't seem like a good idea, would it? No, because he's big and he's got teeth and he's got claws. And so what our brain does is it turns that amygdala, that fear center, turns down the thinking part of our brain, that prefrontal cortex. And instead what it does is it turns up the part of the brain called the noradrenergic nucleus of the locus ceruleus, or as I like to call it, the part of the brain responsible for, I don't know karate, but I do know crazy, right? That's our within the brain stress response, and it gets you amped up. And the less obvious thing that happens is that when you activate your stress response, it also activates your immune response so that your body can bring inflammation to stabilize that wound so you can live long enough to beat that bear or get away. It's brilliant. It was designed over millennia to save our lives from a mortal threat, right? But the problem is what happens when that bear comes home every night. And this biological process that was designed to save our lives is activated over and over and over again. And it goes from being adaptive or life-saving to health-damaging, right? And so what we see is changes to the structure and function of the way children's brains develop, their immune system, their hormonal systems, and even the way their DNA is read and transcribed, right? And this is what we now understand to be the toxic stress response. So when we understand that is this, and what's particularly important is that kids are especially sensitive to this overactivity of the stress response because their brains and bodies are just developing, right? So high doses of stress hormones when you're a kid has a outsized impact on the development of the brain and body. And what we see is that even though the ACE study was done in adults and showed increased risk of health problems in adulthood, we can identify this as early as infancy. Like, we recognize now that babies, when their stress response is activated, it affects their sleep, their development, their growth, right? And for kids, we see increased risk of things like asthma and infections and learning difficulties and behavioral problems. And as kids get older, we see increased risk of other health problems as well. right? When I was a pediatrician practicing in Bayview Hunters Point, I did a research study to look at how ACEs affected the learning and behavior of my patients that I was caring for. And what we saw was that, you know, for my kids that I was caring for, if they had no ACEs, only 3% of them had learning and behavior problems. If they had 1 to 3 ACEs, 20%. If they had 4 more ACEs, 51.2% had learning and behavior problems. But one of my patients who had 4 more ACEs was 32 times as likely to have learning and behavior problems as my kid with no ACEs. And you know what? When I saw this, I was looking at the data and the risk, and I almost missed the most important piece. Which is that when our kids have no ACEs, right, they're doing okay. And in fact, and this was black and brown kids in the inner city in San Francisco. This was Hunters Point, right? And what this tells me is that our kids are not broken, right? Our kids are not broken, but their bodies and their brains are responding to toxic doses of adversity. And the reason why I think this is so important is because, you know, for a lot of these kids, how are they coming in? They're, you know, we have teachers doing what they're supposed to do. You know, sending me a report saying, hey, this kid can't pay attention. He's got ADHD. Right? Well, it turns out when you look at you remember I was talking about the part of the brain for executive functioning, that prefrontal cortex? This is the way it works. It works when this little graph here is the effect of stress hormones on that part of the brain, right? And essentially, if you don't have enough stress hormones, you can't pay attention. Like if you don't have enough stimulants, you can't pay attention. And that's the reason why stimulants, what's the #1 treatment for ADHD in the United States of America? Stimulants, like Ritalin, Adderall, all that stuff. And the reason why is because if a kid doesn't have enough stimulants, their prefrontal cortex doesn't work. They're distracted, disorganized, forgetful, impulsive, right? But as you move along this chart, if they get way more stress hormones, right? So you add a little Ritalin and they get better. But the problem is, what if you have a kid that started in the middle to begin with? They were doing all right. But then you added a ton of stress hormones, and now they're distracted, disorganized, right, forgetful, and impulsive, right? And that's why it's so important for us to be understanding the science of ACEs, how it's affecting our kids. Because if you have a kid who's over here on the graph, right, what's the treatment? It's not stimulants. It's to reduce the dose of adversity and enhance the buffering caregiving in that child's life, right? And that is how we use the science to break the cycle. I'm here, you guys, to tell you tonight that we can break the intergenerational cycle of adverse childhood experiences and toxic stress. And here's the first way we do it, right? This is what the science is showing us, that our stress response, remember, it was designed to save our lives from a mortal threat. It's a good thing. There's something called the positive stress response. Nobody ever talks about that. Positive stress response is like, you know, you have a little bit of activation of your stress hormones, you do the thing that you got to do, and then your body recovers. And you know what? Even when we have an additional heavier stress that's more prolonged and more activated, that yellow box there, right, that's the science. It says homeostasis, this is the body's biological balance, recovers through the buffering effect of a caring adult or other interventions, right? And this is what the research and the science is telling us, is that when children experience safe, stable, and nurturing in relationships and environments, literally MRI studies of children's brains show that children in a randomized controlled trial, when they're randomized to nurturing care, normalization of the white matter tracts of their brains, right, is what we're seeing in research. We're seeing that the immune system becomes regulated when we do things like meditation, exercise, social supports. You know, as a mom to 4 boys, It's busy at my house. 3, 7, and 16-year-old twins. Pray for me. Yeah. But when anything happens to any one of our boys, anything scary, because I'm going to tell you all right now, you all know this, I don't need to tell you, right? There's no magic fairy dust that keeps adversity from hitting people's families. Terrible things happen. People get mental illness. People get sick. People get arrested. Right? We've had adversity even in my own household. Right? And when that happens, what we do is we pull our kids close and we love on them and we support them, right? Because what that does is that it releases oxytocin, right? That's the snuggle hormone. You all ever heard of oxytocin? It's what, for ladies, anybody who's had a baby, if you go in the hospital, right, you might get oxytocin to augment your pregnancy. It's the snuggle hormone, right? And that hormone, oxytocin, that is released through nurturing and caring relationship, it essentially does the opposite of everything that toxic stress does. It protects your heart lining, right? It inhibits the stress response. It protects against the impacts of stress on our cells, right? So this is what the biology is showing us, is that healing is possible. And that healing goes all the way down to our DNA, right? That actually, when they do this research in rats and they see the rat pups where their moms hug on them and snuggle them and do all that kind of stuff, it actually leads to changes in those rat pups' DNA that gets handed down from generation to generation, right? We can heal. We can break the cycle. And this is how we do it. We do it by number one, I'm going to tell you the most important thing is just recognize what's going on with you in the first place, right? I want to say, for anyone in this room who's even struggling with their own ACEs, you are not broken, right? Your body is doing what it was designed to do to protect you from a mortal threat. And now you just got to recognize, oh, that's my stress response. It's being a little overactive, and I know what I got to do. When I know the signs for myself, whatever it is, and then understand how I make a plan to do mindfulness or to seek those supportive relationships that I know are healing and a buffer to me, or to get that mental health or the psychotherapy, whatever it is, this is how we heal, right? I'm going to skip forward to make sure that we don't run out of time. Long story short is the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine agrees with me. And here in California, I'll just say, y'all coming in as your first Surgeon General. I was talking to a group of providers earlier today, and we're setting some bold goals, right? I am being extremely ambitious, but the ambition is not for me, it's for our kids. I'm not coming into this role so that I can say, maybe we can do a little bit of this and a little bit of that. We are going to cut ACEs and toxic stress in California in half in a generation. And here's how we're going to do it, right? Number one, we're going to do prevention by raising awareness, shouting it from the rooftops, making sure that everyone is trained and understands, making sure that we all recognize, we know that the more adversity you have, the more risk you have, but we also know that the more buffering and caring and nurturing relationships you have, the more that counteracts that. So let's tip the scales and raise the dose of buffering, nurturing care that we're providing to our kids and frankly to ourselves and each other across our society. We're doing that broad scale screening so we can do early detection and early intervention, because all of the science says that the earlier we identify and the earlier we intervene, the better off our kids are. We are going to break the cycle and interrupt what we call vertical transmission, handing down from parent to child, by making sure that We're taking a two-generation approach that we're supporting not only the kids. I've never met a child who had high ACEs who didn't also have a parent who had high ACEs. This is not about blaming and shaming. This is not about telling parents what they're doing wrong. This is about helping parents understand how they can heal so that they can keep from handing down ACEs to their kids. And we're strengthening that cross-sector referral because, we may be screening in the doctor's office, but we recognize that the answer, the solution, the interventions isn't just happening in the doctor's office. It's happening in our schools. It's happening in our after-school programs. It's happening on our playgrounds. It's happening in our boys and girls clubs. It's happening in our churches and our synagogues and all across our community, right? And so as we move forward in addressing this public health crisis with a public health solution, right? Training our providers, supporting that buffering care infrastructure, and raising awareness among our public. I just want to end by sharing with you all, right, that this is not an unfunded mandate. As you heard from Senator McGuire, our governor invested $40 million to reimburse doctors for screening for ACEs, and an additional $50 million to help to train doctors on how to screen and how to respond with trauma-informed care. Yeah, I think that's worth applause. And an additional almost $200 million to support our learning, our early learning and care workforce with education and training, right? An additional $50 million for after-school education and safety programs. This is what we're seeing, right? Across our society, we are making these investments. And the last thing I'll share is something I feel really proud about. In my role as Surgeon General, I've been convening something called the ACEs Reduction Leadership Team, meeting with the directors of the Departments of Health and Human Services, with the governor's office, with education, with law enforcement, to create a plan for how we're going to cut ACEs and toxic stress in half in a generation. And everyone is coming to the table. This is what we do. This is what a public health approach looks like. We can do this. We did it for tobacco between 1996 and 2016. Teen smoking went from 25% to 3.6%. We did it for maternal mortality from 2007. That top line is the national number, United States. That blue line is California. From 2007, we reduced maternal mortality in our state by 55%. When I'm back here in 20 years, it won't be my first time coming back here, but when I'm back here in 20 years, and we are back in this room, that's a slide we're going to be seeing, and it's going to be for ACEs in our community. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, our Surgeon General, let's give a round of applause for Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris, the Pioneer Classes in our kids. We are so grateful that she is here tonight, and we are also grateful for several community leaders who have joined us tonight. We'd like to be able to introduce them, and then we'd like to be able to introduce you to our panel of experts as well. We'd like to be able to introduce Steve Madrone from the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors is with us tonight. I want to say thank you to Supervisor Mike Wilson has joined us tonight. From the Humboldt County Board of Supervisors, Virginia Bass is here this evening. The Mayor of Eureka, Susan Seaman, is here tonight. From the Eureka City Council, Kim Burgell is here this evening. Representing the Eureka City School Board, we have Mario Fernandez here tonight. And he is the head honcho at the California Highway Patrol here in Humboldt. We have Captain Stacy Barr tonight. So if it would be all right with everyone, we'd like to be able to lay out the format for the rest of the evening. We have 4 amazing speakers who will be talking to us about their experiences with ACEs and how they're leading the fight with all of you to combat this crisis in our community. We're going to first hear from Erica Tracy. She's the executive director of the Hoopa Tribal Education Association. Then we're going to turn to, absolutely. She also has the best shirt on of the evening this evening, so it's good stuff, and she's going to talk about that here in just a bit. We're grateful that Chris Hartley is here tonight. He's the Humboldt County Superintendent of Schools. Then we're going to hear from the director of the Humboldt County Department of Health and Human Services, Director Connie Beck. We're grateful that our final speaker tonight is going to be the medical director from the Humboldt Independent Practice Association, Dr. Candy Stockton. If it's okay with everybody, we will have each of our 4 presenters present their briefing to each and every one of us. We're then going to open it up for the most important part of tonight, and that's hearing from all of you. If it works for you, we're going to go out in the audience with 2 microphones here in the main room. We're going to have you literally just hold up your hand, give us your first name, and please just share away your comment, question, or concern. We have quite a few folks who are going to want to speak tonight, so if y'all don't mind, we're going to keep it as rapid fire as possible. We're going to call it our lightning round. For folks who are in the overflow room, we are now going to start passing out index cards with pens. We're then going to take those index cards and we're going to read them out, whether there are comments or questions, making sure that all voices are heard tonight. Is that all right with everybody? All right. So without further ado, let's go to our local panel of experts, and we're grateful that they're here tonight. A round of applause for the Executive Director of the Hoopa Tribal Education Association, Ms. Erica Tracy.
Sorry, there we go. Let's try that again. Satya Nohtan, I'm very happy to see you all here today. My name is Erica Tracy, and I'm the Education Director for the Hoopa Valley Tribe and a very, very proud member of the Trauma-Informed Movement. And that's something that I would like to talk about today with you. So the Trauma-Informed Movement is a cross-systems collective to address the impacts of ACEs for our kids and community in the Klamath-Trinity region. And we've officially been moving and shaking since 2017. Since then, we have met nonstop, monthly meetings at least once, maybe more. Currently, our trauma-informed movement is ever growing and always open, but we are a collective so far, primarily driven by the Hoopa Valley Tribe, Hoopa Tribal Education Association staff, Tribal TANF, Kamau Medical Center, their behavioral health team, their outreach and public health providers, as well as clinicians and providers. KTJUSD, amazing dedicated staff that actually go above and beyond to volunteer their time to participate in our TIM meetings, to go to trainings, all of the above. So we have representation here from our TIM organization. So if you are here, please wave, stand up, show your shirts. We are a very large group. We've also had quite a bit of county support, and I have to thank Marianne and Danielle, especially from First Five, who have been in our corner since the very beginning, supporting all of the work that we've done, providing us with some opportunities for funding. DHHS, we have a wonderful partnership that's really bringing a direct impact to our students that we'll talk a little bit more about. Two Feathers Native American Family Services is also a strong partner that is helping get our wellness services off the ground. We've had participants from UIHS, from the Yurok tribe, and many others, and like I said, still growing. So please reach out if you're interested, because there's lots of work to do, as you know. Knowing that Humboldt County has a high ACE score in general, we also know that our Native population is often underrepresented in some data. So one of the first things that we decided to do in 2017 was to take a sample of data in our community. So at different events, like our Sovereign's Day event, our community health fair, we took a survey. We gathered about 260 ACEs surveys in Hoopa, but had participation from kind of our other communities around us. And at that time, we realized that of that sample, 70.6% had a score of 2 or more, and 31.4% had a score of 4 or more. Of the most reported, over 20% reported neglect or sexual abuse or witness to DV. The next highest was 30% for physical, emotional, or verbal abuse, or potentially a household member with a mental illness. The highest were over 60% reports. For parental separation was number 1, and substance abuse by a household member was number 2. With that data collected, just representative of our community, our staff, and some of our students that decided to participate in this, we thought that this might be an issue, and now we've started to collect data. I'd also like to report that our Kamau medical staff, our pediatrician, and through collaboration with our early childhood programs, we now have a system in place where we are screening already. At Kamau Medical Center, we have all of our students that are coming into our early childhood programs that have to go and get their wellness exams before entrance. They are using the Center for Youth Wellness, the identified ACEs screening tool, thank you, and, and also the parent information and handouts. And with that, when it's given to us, not the study, but at least the yes or no, we already have a heads up of the children that we're serving immediately. So with our TIM movements, we have about 3 major action plans and priorities, but there is much work to do, so there's a little more than that, but these are the 3 we'll focus on today. So there's a Student Wellness Center that I am happy to report from the last ACEs town hall to now, it was still in the very, very infant stages. Fast forward, we are providing services. Yes, absolutely. We also have a focus on resilience building tools, practices, and spaces for all students and staff, and an increased education, knowledge sharing, and leadership and community leadership buy-in. So some of our efforts, like I mentioned, our Student Wellness Center is on the campus of the Hoopa Valley High School, so it's located in Hoopa, but it is serving district-wide. It's been fully functioning and operational since January 2019. We have some awesome Wellness Center staff here that have worked very, very hard to receive funding, to create partnerships, and to provide services for our students. Only since January 2019. In the school year, so January 19 to June 19, we made 350 contacts. From September 19 to November 19, right now, we have seen 1,070 student contacts just in that building alone. So in our Student Wellness Center, we're doing mental health services. We're doing mental health services, wellness groups, substance abuse counseling, student and family case management, nursing, and in the future are looking towards building partnerships for health services. We've been working on boxes and baskets in all of our classrooms so that there are sensory tools and materials, regulation, education for both staff and students, and then also a focus on self-care. We recognize that as providers and educators, we have tough work ahead of us. We know that our children have ACEs, we know that our staff have ACEs. So trying to create a culture of self-care and wellness is something that we have really tried to incorporate as well. We've also done an extensive amount of training and have been fortunate to participate in numerous trainings and conferences, and at this point, I think are really starting to see the impacts of that. We've also had our TIM community engagement dinners, thanks to the ACEs collaborative partnership agreements that we've received 2 years consecutively. Thank you very much. The TIM community engagement dinners, we served 711 participants across 5 sites. Those were families visiting. This were grandparents, parents, children, staff, everyone pitching in to learn about sensory tools so that the tools that they're using in classrooms can be used at home to provide trauma-informed education to the parents. And they were phenomenal, and we're getting ready to gear up for our second round of those. Advocacy efforts, we've been working with leadership across different systems to try to create more buy-in, and of course, getting the word out there. But what I am most excited to share with you today is that it was a little iffy if we were going to make the deadline to today, but we did. And so just on Monday, the Hoopa Valley Tribal Council passed a resolution of the Hoopa Valley Tribe recognizing the effectiveness of culturally relevant trauma-responsive practices and approaches in educational services, programming, efforts, and initiatives in the Hoopa Valley in Natanu. So please know that if and when you are coming to Hoopa, that this is our new standard. This is our new standard for all of our programs under our education umbrella, for all of the education that's happening for our children in the Hoopa Valley, and we'll hopefully be getting this out to all of our partnering agencies shortly. So, Satia.
Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause for Erica Tracy, Executive Director of the Hoopa Tribal Education Association. Erica, amazing work that you, tribal leaders, and members have been doing over these past 3 years. Earlier today, the Surgeon General had an opportunity to be able to sit down with educational as well as healthcare leaders from each of Humboldt County tribes, along with representatives from local government and the healthcare community. Who was also at the table was our Superintendent of Schools from the Humboldt County Office of Education, Chris Hartley. So you just heard what Hoopa Valley's focusing in on. Now we're going to hear from our Superintendent of Schools as an overview of how local schools are focusing on ACEs. We know that there's much more work to do, but a lot has been accomplished. Ladies and gentlemen, our Superintendent of Schools, Chris Hartley.
Thank you. I'll tell you what, folks, I've given a lot of speeches in here, given out a lot of awards. We've held holiday parties in here. And this is a fabulous turnout. And to all the people over in the annex across the parking lot, I'm just going to give them a big wave too. Folks have actually taken this so seriously and given us your generous time that we've got overflow people headed all over the place on the campus. But in order to make that happen, I've got to give a little love to our staff, because gratitude is something we take very seriously here at Humboldt County Office of Education. So big round of applause for all the staff members who made today possible. Thank you, guys and ladies. We got custodians, we got technology folks, we've got it all, and they worked really hard to serve this county and this community, so thank you to them. And I also have to do a shameless plug for the Addicts Among Us. Laura, I told you I'd do this for you. If you have a chance to check this out, fantastic documentary, December 5th, there's a showing, and Laura, why don't you stand up so people can see you later? There you go, there's Laura. Get that information, check it out. So standing up here, or sitting here with the Surgeon General, I got to tell you, I'm like, my leg is purple because I've been pinching it the whole time. The work that you've done, and she leaned over, she goes, I can't believe so many people are here. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Do you realize what you've done for us? And so you are a true service agent. And I want to start what I have to say by first putting it into perspective for you. Using the acronym ACEs has allowed us a platform to talk about trauma. As an at-risk teacher, my first teaching job was up here at Zoe Barnum, teaching at the continuation school. We worked with difficult families, students in trauma, every day. But until we had the concept of an ACE score, and until we were able to label it out so succinctly and to have a discussion and build that awareness, we've never been able to have the context that we have because of your work. And that's why all these people are here, because it allows us to have that conversation and a shared understanding. And most importantly, I think it allows us to tell our stories. We all have some experience with ACEs. And when we can relate to each other, we can relate to our students, we can do great things. And so that's why they're all here. Thank you so much. I am just absolutely thrilled to be a part of this with you. Thank you. I've got like probably 3 minutes left now, Senator, so I'm going to buzz this thing. But I wanted to make sure I had an opportunity to bring awareness to the acronym MTSS, and that stands for Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. And this is the model that basically Humboldt County has adopted to deliver our services and to align our services among all our schools and our educators and in our interagency partnerships that we have. And this model is actually, we started training on this just before the last time you guys had a town hall meeting, and have really taken it into earnest up to this point. And I'm happy to say that in Humboldt County, we've, at this point, 17 LEAs, probably 50, 60 schools, over a couple hundred teachers and many other educators and many other people in different divisions have gone through the initial trainings for multi-tiered systems of support. And all it does is it gives us a platform, and you can see that there's a lot of different buckets that are involved in that. But what that picture says to me, without boring you with a lot of graphics, is that it's nobody can do this work alone. That it's multi-tiered and it's a system. And when we work together, we can support our children by aligning our services. There's a few things that it does for us. It allows us to do trauma-informed practices at the schools. Classroom management with positive behavior supports. I'm sad to say I used to be a dean of students at Arcata High School. Not sad that I was a dean of students, but sad that sometimes some of the disciplinary measures we would take for students that would come to school under the influence. I don't know how many students I suspended for 5 days. What were we doing? Right? That was ridiculous. Let's send them home so they can be home around more drugs and alcohol for 5 days. It was crazy. When you think about it, you're like, what on earth was going on in California schools? Now we have classroom management with positive behavior supports front and center so that we can deal with those students and give them the support that they need. Integration of restorative practices, another way to build community, create positive culture in our schools, get children to talk with one another, get adults to talk with one another. That's not just in a school setting, that's among our county and between our agencies. And rich and supportive positive learning environments. MTSS gives us the platform to do that. I want to talk about real quick on some of the things that we're working on, how we're going to be able to accomplish this here locally. The first thing is we have to deepen our interagency partnerships. So when we say multi-systems again, we have to work together. And in the last 3 years, I'm very excited to show you and to share that we are doing that in our partnerships with DHHS, First Five, Changing Tides, the list goes on and on and on. And it's because we're having common language and people are actually committing not only their time, but legitimately their resources to this common effort. We have two positions that I'm really excited to share where we are sharing personnel between our systems. When you've worked in, how many government agency folks in here work for some sort of government agency, public agency? A lot of us understand we have a lot of bureaucracy and a lot of complexity. Sometimes to get the simplest thing done, it's like crazy red tape that you have to go through. You're like, common sense just got kicked out the door. Well, sometimes in order for our systems to work together, we have to share people. And we have two positions that we're sharing right now in partnership with DHHS, one in the foster youth area and one with around student attendance in our county and case management out of truancy court. These individuals live in two different systems so they can talk the language and they serve as change agents for hundreds of people because they can share their experiences and bridge dialogue. Holy smokes. I can do it, Senator. I'm going to do it. The other one here, and I haven't even clicked through any of these slides because I'm just having a blast. All means all. That's what that one says. There you go. Okay. Universal support. This slide's important to me because it shows you as the scale goes up, the support's intensified, but it should be serving fewer students. In my experience in Humboldt County, we're doing this backwards right now. All of our support is happening to all of the students in an intensive way. If you look at the idea of the pyramid model, where your universal support should exist at the bottom and your top-tiered services are at the top, we're spending our time putting out fires and dealing with crisis at the top all the time. We are shifting that so that we're providing universal supports and services to all students to get ahead of the game because, frankly, folks, we're wearing our teachers out. We're wearing our staff members out. We really are. I hate to applaud for that, but it's a reality and it's an acknowledgement, and we gotta beef up our universal services because we just can't keep up. That's what MTSS is going to do for us. The last thing that I want to share with you, Senator, and everybody else, is that we have to advocate. And Senator McGuire is probably pretty sick of me now. He knows, oh, he's coming to Sacramento, and I'm going to come and say, Senator, we need help because you know what? We got to provide more services at school sites. We need resources at school sites. And he agrees with us, and he's been super supportive, and we're getting things done because we have to advocate for rural schools, folks. That's the other issue we have. Folks in the urban, look at this, another round of applause. Yes, yes. So with our advocacy, we not only develop a common understanding, but we allow ourselves to share with the folks down in Sacramento and throughout the state how amazing our community is, but also the challenges that we face. But I really do agree with you. We can be an example for the rest of the state of California. Thank you very much.
Great job, Superintendent. Our Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Chris Hartley. The County of Humboldt has been focused on childhood trauma and services for the past 3 years. And tonight we're going to hear from the leader of the Health and Human Services Department. Let's just be candid, and she's going to take this head on. There were challenges within her department. And working with the board, she is bringing generational change to Health and Human Services and record investment in our kids and trauma services. If we can give a round of applause to the Director of Health and Human Services for the County of Humboldt, Ms. Connie Beck.
Thank you. I'm
Close.
Oh, do I need to put?
You just gotta get close.
Okay, can you hear me now? Great. Before I get started, I noticed there's another leader here tonight, and I just wanted to acknowledge our WIAT Tribal Chairman, Ted Hernandez, is back in the back, and I just want to say, acknowledge that he's here, and I'm thankful for that, and if there's any other tribal chairman here, I'm so thankful for you to be here, so I just wanted to start with that. I'm gonna provide another update on the Child Welfare Services System reform work since the Attorney General judgment, and also talk a little bit about the work that the Department of Health and Human Services is doing to address and prevent ACEs. The Attorney General investigation began in 2015 following concerns from local tribes and other community partners about child welfare services and the Sheriff's Office. A judgment was filed in February of 2018, laying out a 3-year term with corrective action timelines and a third-party compliance monitor. Some of the system review findings were calls were not always answered timely, not all reports that required cross-reporting were sent to law enforcement, investigations were remaining open longer than statutory requirements of 40 days, we didn't have a formal complaint process, and importantly, we lacked a process for community feedback about barriers and issues in our system. The review also found that we had inconsistent collaboration with tribes and inconsistent levels of engagement with tribal families. Staff training and support were needed to improve performance, policy and procedures needed updating, and appropriate staffing levels needed to be identified. I'm going to see if I can do this now. Since February of 2018, our new system includes answering hotline calls by a social worker 24 hours a day. We have implemented and are monitoring electronic cross-reporting, and we have updated policy and procedures. We went from the I went backwards, didn't I? Oh, man. We went from 293 backlogged investigations for over 40 days to 31 as of the end of October. We have created an ombudsperson office for investigating complaints and a community task force that meets quarterly and is chaired by my partner, Chris Hartley. We are increasing collaboration with local tribes by developing government-to-government protocols. We have increased the number of social workers, and a workload study will be completed soon. We are also working with the contractor and members of the community task force on a child protection reporting guide that should assist all of us with the hotline and referral process. Looking to the future, we will be implementing an Indian Child Welfare Act program, continuous quality improvement, and increasing workforce development. These steps should improve the way we work with families and the community, and we will be reaching out for your assistance in determining what is important to you. The local conversation about ACEs that we've been having has informed a lot of work that we do at DHHS, including the development of our strategic plan. The plan guides all people working across the department. A large focus is on prevention, and another is providing accessible, culturally responsive services to all regions in the county. Another focus is becoming a more trauma-informed organization. We are making huge system changes in a very short period of time and trying to work on staff retention at the same time. We are looking at how we deliver services, but also looking at how the exposure to secondary trauma affects our staff. We contracted with the University of Kentucky's Center on Trauma and Children, who has done this work across the United States. A baseline study was completed in November 2018. This was a staff assessment of areas including staff safety, resilience building, and routine practices. There was a lot done between November and July to make changes, especially to training and access to wellness resources. In July 2019, a reassessment was done. As you can see, we didn't turn green overnight, but we did show improvement in every area, and we will continue to assess our trauma-informed house annually. Lastly, this is page 3 of our DHHS strategic plan. We are focusing on prevention, using data, and adopting a collective impact approach that will bring people together as we move strategies upstream. In public health, we're working on a community health improvement plan. Through multiple processes, the community has identified substance use disorder, housing and homelessness, and ACEs as the 3 biggest priorities. We look forward to partnering with each of you here in this room tonight to move upstream to prevent and reduce the impact of adverse childhood experiences and improve the health of our community. Thank you for being here and for all of the partners that we have in this room and on the panel. I appreciate all of you.
Thank you so much, Madam Director. We're lucky to be able to have Dr. Candy Stockton with us tonight. She has absolutely hot dang. She has extensive background, as all of you know, about all issues regarding the opioid epidemic and on ACEs. She's going to be talking about her prenatal substance abuse program, and she's going to be focusing on the incredible work that's been happening at McKinleyville Middle School. Without further ado, can we get a warm round of applause for Dr. Candy Stockton?
Hi, thank you so much. I know I am the last speaker standing between you and your opportunity to ask questions of the Surgeon General, so I will try to be brief. But I am so proud of the community work that's happening on the medical front and interventions that we're doing locally that I would like to share a few of these things with you. So I'm going to skip past this because we all know we have a lot of ACEs. So what I will talk about is actually two of our programs that are directly geared towards intervening at that from a medical standpoint. So the first is our McKinleyville Middle School Health Center project, which we're very excited about. This opened actually during last school year. We have about 50% of the kids who are attending the school enrolled in our program. We've provided last year nearly 1,000 visits on site, and we're on track for those same numbers again this year. This is a unique program. It's not what you might think of in specifically being like doctor visits for children. So we offer wellness coaching, education around substance use. We run a girls group. Shout out to Vanessa if she's here tonight to help focus on to help focus on positive self-image and coping skills. And we're just starting up a boys group to help deal with anger management and aggression issues and also promote more positive self-image. So trying to cope and build resilient skills in these populations. And we really focus on the importance of those skills. We do assessments with all of our enrollees for the social determinants of health and help connect them to services that are appropriate for those needs. So really excited. This is more than just a doctor's visit. This is support for where children are at. And our second project is our perinatal substance use disorder project. We are desperately searching for a better name currently right now, but we are really proud of the work that we do, and I will correct the senator just a little bit. He said for my project. This is not my project. I am blessed to be a part of this project, but it's a cross-sector project involving many, many agencies in the county, and we're so grateful for that participation. I'm going to call it just a couple of the things that we're really proud about. So in the last couple of months, we actually rolled out our initial early intervention program. So now we're working with OB offices to implement screening for increased risk of substance use disorders during pregnancy at intake to pregnancy. We're rolling that out with a trauma-informed training for staff and medical offices to make sure that we're identifying and providing help rather than taking this as a punitive or judgmental approach. So when we do identify women who are at increased risk, there is a voluntary referral process where they can connect with our pregnancy care navigator to actually connect them to any resources that they might need to have a healthier pregnancy and a healthier parenting experience. And the sooner we can get those women connected to appropriate resources, the more stable the environment that they're taking children home in will be. So we're super excited about that. And then we also, on the other end of that process, are developing, I am so sorry, I lost my train of thought. So, I'm sorry, on the other end of the process, at delivery, our county is actually implementing a very innovative project called the Eat, Sleep, Console project. This is for how we manage newborns that are born exposed to drugs. Our county has the third highest rate in the state of infants that are born experiencing withdrawal from the effects of drug exposure during pregnancy. And our previous method for dealing with that has been kind of shuttling them off to the NICU, separating them from their families and caregivers, and loading them up with narcotics to help mitigate those symptoms a little bit. And science has really shown us recently that the more appropriate way to deal with this is actually provide support to the family structure for caring for and supporting that infant through that process. So our newer approach actually is to empower moms and families to care for their infants and avoid that medicalization of this process. And with this, since we've implemented, we have had 16 deliveries of babies experiencing some level of withdrawal symptoms or from exposure to drugs, and we've been able to successfully manage 15 of those babies in the room with their moms, supporting bonding and family development. And this is really exciting. And a shout out for your county who's doing this. This is happening at both the St. Joseph hospitals and at Mad River Hospital, so it is across the board. And we were asked to participate we were identified as a county who had a big problem with this, so we were asked to participate in the California Maternity Quality Care Collaborative around work to help us improve this, but we were a little ahead of the process. So of all the counties that are actually participating, they were so excited when we told them what we were doing that they're actually pushing out the protocols and plans that were developed here to other counties in the process. So they showed up thinking that they needed to tell us what to do to make us better, and we were able to share what we're doing with the rest of the state. So as a county, you should be very proud of the innovative and ahead of its time work that's actually happening here. And that is all I have to say, because I know that you really want to talk to Dr. Burke-Harris.
Round of applause, please, for Dr. Candy Stockton, everyone. All right, here's what we'd like to be able to do. We're going to be coming out to each and every one of you to be able to ask your questions if you have any comments, and obviously being able to share some concerns. Thomas and I will be splitting up the room. All you need to do is just be able to raise your hand, give us your first name, and then please just be able to move forward with your question or comment. We want to make sure that we leave plenty of time because we know that there are going to be a lot of folks who will have questions, comments, and want to have some conversation. We're also going to be bringing in the comment cards, the question cards, from the overflow room in just a couple of minutes. So we'll alternate, if everyone's okay with that, between live questions here and the overflow room question and comment cards. All right, so let's move. I'm going to come right over here to our first question or comment. Give us your first name. Thank you so much and welcome.
My name is Hillary, and a concern that I have in our community is the most vulnerable population we have that has not been mentioned tonight are homeless preschoolers. These children are suffering adversity more than almost any other children in our community, but they are not receiving services. There are agencies that are tasked to provide services, and we need to get those services to them.
No, thank you so much, Hillary. All right. So why don't we start this? Why don't we go to the superintendent, and we're going to ask lightning round just because we're going to have a lot of folks who are going to want to be able to have a conversation. We'll go to the superintendent, and then we'll also look to the director of health and human, anyone else who would like to be able to chime in. Please, Mr. Superintendent.
No, Hillary, thank you for your comments, and you're right. We are interested in understanding more about exactly what level of preschool folks we have in our county that are homeless, and we've got some different programs that we're going to try to figure out how to combine them. And like we talked about earlier, interagency partnerships around a complicated issue is our next steps. And so I know we have a focus group meeting coming up on that in the next month or so, and we look forward to making some measured progress in that area and invite anybody that's interested to join us.
Thank you. Madam Surgeon General or Director Beck, any items that you want to comment on this specific issue?
I would just add that I think that preschoolers, teachers are mandated reporters, and if there's other issues besides homelessness, then we should be contacted in child welfare. But besides that, there are multiple programs that we have in the county for housing families or individuals with children. So no child should be homeless.
Thank you so much. Director Beck, can you just, best way to be able to get a hold of those programs, website, phone number, do you want to give that out real quick where folks can go?
We're on the county intranet under child welfare, under Humboldt County, Department of Health and Human Services.
Thank you so much. Thank you. We're going to go to Erica Tracy quick.
I was just going to mention that this comes up in our community quite often, and we are handling it through cross systems. Just the other day, actually, I'd like to acknowledge even our Head Start manager who's here and was just advocating for a homeless family, connected with our tribal council, with our Kamau Medical Center, and we're able to solve the solution immediately. So I think it's all about those partnerships again.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Thomas, and we're going to ask each individual to please stand just so we can get you on camera. Fire away, please.
Hi, I'm Dr. Mangajas. I'm a pediatrician. I work at Open Door in Eureka. I have a couple of my coworkers with here. The first comment that I have is that I really appreciate all the work that you guys do, and I wish that you guys would collaborate and work with us. The only way we knew about this is that Casey is friends with a teacher, and I think that this is very much framed as like an educational issue, but we as pediatricians see ACEs and screen for them a lot, but we don't have the resources, or at least we don't know who to contact in order to make those referrals and to partner with other people. And one of the biggest things that we struggle with is people come to us saying that their teacher or someone wants them evaluated for ADHD, and we know that it's very trauma-based, and yet we feel that the only thing that we can offer them is stimulant medications, like you said, Dr. Burke-Harris. And we know that what they want and what they need is evidence-based treatment, but we don't know who to connect them with, and we don't have a robust referral system. And so I think that, meet us, partner with us, talk to us, get our numbers,
So, thank you so much, Doctor. We're going to turn it over to the Surgeon General.
Yeah, this is one of my favorite things of coming and being at these parts of town halls and these types of things, so that folks can connect. Right, and so that we can establish that network of care here in Humboldt County.
Thank you. Please, Dr. Stockman.
And I was just going to give a quick shout out to our Family Resource Center network. Actually, if you don't know who to connect them with their local Family Resource Center site, who will know how to help connect them with the appropriate resources.
Thank you so much. Anyone else from the panel before we go to our next question or comment?
I would just add, I appreciate that you're bringing that particular subject up, because one of the things that we talk about, that reversed tiered of MTSS, where we're doing all tier 2 and tier 3 interventions, oftentimes referring folks right into special ed for testing is a tier 2 or tier 3, when we're not aware that we need more universal supports to meet those children's need at a lower level. So your point is spot on, and it's evidence of the work that we're trying to do to get ahead of with universal supports.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to our next question or comment. Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Gina Walker. I'm a psychotherapist in private practice. I'm noticing an important partner that I don't hear or see in the materials, and that I think are really imperative to have at this table is the judges and mediators who make custody decisions, and how can we get them to join us if they're not already.
No, thank you so much, Doctor. We're going to go to great question. We're going to go to the Executive Director of First Five, Ms. Hanson.
So I thank you for bringing that issue up, and I want to acknowledge the work of Judge Joyce Heinrichs and the creation of the Family Wellness Courts in Humboldt County, and also the Joint Jurisdictional Courts with the Hupa and Yurok tribes, the Family Wellness Courts, which are bringing a new perspective and way of dealing with families, essentially. And actually, Dr. Brooke Harris said this earlier today. It's like you want to wrap around, right? You want to hug families, and that is the perspective and philosophy of the Family Wellness Court. And we've been working with them. I know Connie has also been working with the Family Wellness Court movement to transform more of our courts to be more responsive and provide that hug for the families so that they're connected to the services that they need.
Thank you so much, Marianne. Anyone else from the panel would like to be able to comment on this in regards to the importance of having judges as well involved in this conversation? All right, Thomas, take it away, please.
Oh, hi, I'm Kiki, thank you, and this is Rocco, and I feel like I could do another hour TED Talk. But what I want to talk about as a lay person or a community person is that oftentimes I have supports. I have my own support system that I've built. I come from just off the charts incredible trauma, and I've had the opportunity to learn about addiction and abuse and at domestic violence, and it's just sort of the feedback loops. And I've had the good fortune to be able to access that information and apply it. When I reach out to people, and I am as a support to them, and I will sometimes reach to other people and talk about, this person has been impacted in this way, and this person has been impacted in this way, and these are some of the things that I'm trying to be helpful with. And I almost always get, well, make sure you're taking care of yourself. And what I want to encourage is that while self-care is imperative, service is imperative, and we have to balance service and self-care, and they are not always mutually exclusive. We're all impacted, and even if it's just like, hey girl, hey, do you need a can of cranberry for your whole Thanksgiving situation? Like, nobody feels like they have any bandwidth, and yet we need each other. And so I think that just stepping out and checking on people, and a lot of people feel like I don't want to impact other people, and even just saying like, hey, don't suicide because you matter. And people will say, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. So I just want to encourage more of us to continue to reaching out to more of us. And of course, if you can assess that you're going to be of more damage than good, then have that boundary. But otherwise, I just would say that we need to keep expanding this community family.
Well said. Thank you so much. Madam Surgeon General, really great points that you just heard there. Please share your comments.
I think that was just absolutely fantastic. I think that is what we heard in terms of the power that we have, right? I think a lot of the times, especially when I talk about screening for ACEs in healthcare, like we're waiting for some magic pill or some magic intervention that's going to come. And I think that we do have a tremendous power to care for each other. I think that balance between caring for each other, and also recognizing how we have healthy boundaries for ourselves is really important. But what you described, it's right on.
Thank you so much. Anyone else on the panel would like to be able to comment and or say hi to Rocky? Oh, there we go. Thank you so much. We're now going to go to Jorge with our next question or comment.
My name is Jorge Matias from St. Joseph's Hospital. Quería aprovechar la oportunidad para hablar con el señor Mike y la doctora Nedini y las personas que están en el panel. Y les quería comentar que por casi 20 años la comunidad hispana con hijos con necesidades especiales estuvimos buscando un grupo de apoyo en español en nuestro idioma.
So my name is Jorge, and I wanted to take the opportunity to talk to Senator Mike and Dr. Nadine. I wanted to let you know that it had to, 20 years had to pass for us in the Spanish-speaking community to get a good support group for us who have kids with special needs. And now with the collaboration with Redwood Coast Regional Center, we have a group, support group in Eureka and Fortuna.
Necesitamos su ayuda y la de todos ustedes aquí presentes para educar y concientizar a nuestros padres, a los maestros y a los niños desde temprana edad, para que todos nuestros hijos, quienes son diferentes, tengan una vida lo más normal posible a la de todos los demás.
So we need you and everyone here present to help us to educate and to bring awareness to parents, teachers, kids, and everyone into an early, in their early years, so that all of our kids who are different, they could have as normal life as possible for, with the support of all of us in the community.
Nice job, Jorge. Thank you. Good job. Madam Surgeon General, please.
Estoy totalmente de acuerdo. Yo pienso que nosotros tenemos que traer ese apoyo por todas nuestras comunidades. Nosotros estamos en el Estado, toda la información que hacemos de ACES estamos traduciendo en muchos idiomas y para que ustedes, para que familias, padres, abuelos, tíos pueden tener la información que necesitamos para asegurar que nuestros niños crezcan saludables. And for non-Spanish speakers, I just said I agree with what you said.
So much. Anyone else would like to be able to address? Thank you. We'd like to be able to go to a couple of questions from the other room. This is coming from a middle school teacher here in Humboldt. There's a shortage of counselors. What steps can be or has been proposed or discussed in our community to be able to increase the number of counselors? We'll go to the superintendent first and anyone else.
That is for sure. We look at workforce issues, and I think Connie can speak to that too, as far as just social workers and counselors in general across the DHHS. But in education, we have several positions that we're direly short in. We look at speech-language pathologists, occupational therapists, mental health counselors, crisis counselors, AOD counselors. We are in a workforce shortage, there's no question about it, throughout the state of California. Going back to the recession, we're still recovering from that because, folks, before the recession, we had in the teacher ed credential program in California, there were 75,000 folks that went into the teaching credential program in 2007. By 2014, that had dropped to 20,000. So we saw 50,000 less people in the teacher ed program during that time period because, frankly, schools were really financially hardship and doing a lot of layoff notices, and it wasn't a good career to go into. So we are recovering quickly in that area. We're advocating at the state level, and we've been pleased at the state's response with incentive systems on how to grow our credential programs. We have a task force that we formed with Humboldt State University around teacher recruitment and also into the areas of counseling. We don't have a speech-language pathology credential program in this region. And frankly, when folks get that credential, they typically go into the medical industry where they can make a lot more money. And so we have to be more competitive with salaries, too. which means we need to do a better job in that area of allocation of our funds. So yes, it's a statewide issue. Locally, I'm happy to say we have a task force that's working on it, and our partnership with Humboldt State in the last year, I would say, has really blossomed.
Thank you so much, Superintendent. Madam Director, anything you want to be able to add to that?
I would just add we have the same issues, our clinicians and social workers. We did increase pay for social workers this last year through our union negotiations, but it's hard, and recruitment and retention when caseloads are high and work is hard, we definitely have some issues there.
Thank you so much. Why don't we go to the Madam Executive Director, and then we'll go to the doctor. Please, Madam Executive Director.
So I just want to share that through this ACEs work, Humboldt County has gained the attention of a health foundation in the Bay Area, which has granted $100,000 to CCRP to develop a behavioral health clinician pathway, do a study about and basically produce a plan for how we can get more behavioral health clinicians in Humboldt County, because we need to bring them here, we need to keep them here, we need to keep the ones that we're training. And so because of the work in this community, we've attracted those funds, and it's not an immediate solution, but it is a long-term systems change solution to figure out how to keep behavioral health clinicians here.
Let's go to Dr. Stockton, then we're going to go to the Surgeon General. Please, Dr. Stockton.
I will also say, I'm sorry, I cannot remember who's running it, so I can't give credit to the right people, but we also have a program locally to expose our high school students who have an interest to various different career options in the healthcare system, not just medicine, but all of the supporting positions, technicians, counseling. And so currently, if you're a professional who works in that area and you're interested in getting involved, we are running panels that go out to the different high schools and talk to the students, because when we can grow our own, not only do we give families here the opportunity for better economic futures, but we're also more likely to keep them in the future.
Thank you so much. Madam Surgeon General, you have the final word on this one.
I think that it's absolutely right that we need more mental health practitioners. And I think that it's a big challenge as we think about how do we address this issue of ACEs, because oftentimes people have this sense of, hey, we can't begin to approach this until we get more mental health providers. And so we don't begin, right? And one of the challenges and one of the opportunities, and particularly in my role, is to recognize how do we look at how we're deploying our current, what we have with, what we have in front of us right now to transform odds. And one of the big pieces of that is recognizing, okay, so when we are doing, we have primary care providers screening for ACEs in primary care, our goal is hopefully to be able to do that early detection and early intervention to reduce the burden of mental health, right? To reduce the amount of the mental health consequences that people have in the long term, and how, as we look at, okay, what is the role our doctors play, what is the role our educators play, how do we have these universal supports, and as we each, I think that we definitely need more mental health providers, and at the same time, we can't let that keep us from moving forward with the work that's so important to do.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to another question from the overflow room, and this is coming from Jacqueline, and she is a student. She wants to know, if she's young, what can she do and other youth do to help on all issues of ACEs? Who would like to be able to take this one first? We're going to start with the Surgeon General. All right.
Raise awareness, Jacqueline. I know your generation is all about this. It's way better on social media than I am. But this is what makes me so excited about this. And when we think about cutting ACEs in half in a generation, because we see that we're changing norms. Some of the stuff that happened in the past generation, I feel like younger generation, our students who are coming up right now, have the opportunity to, number one, just totally blow stigma out of the water, to have these open conversations about ACEs, about encouraging folks to get the help that they need and get the support that they need in whatever ways that they need it, and also begin to recognize that there's just get rid of the shame and the blame and all of that drama that we've been bringing from generation to generation, and really just completely change the narrative on this.
No, thank you so much. Erica Tracy, you want to chime in on this? Because I know this has been a real passion of yours.
Sure. I think that back to the point of just being there and making yourself present, right? Because a part of this movement is that it only takes one person to build resiliency. And so youth can be that one person. I think that even for those of us who grew up here or have a certain background or experience different things in our lives, it was our peers that could have been that one person a lot of the time. And so just reaching out more, I think the stigma is absolute, because that has been a hindrance for us, and especially in a community where sometimes we don't have access to those things, or it's not a normal thing to see a mental health clinician or provider. We're slowly making those changes, and thankfully with the partnerships that we have, but it's also so peer driven. I think the success of the Wellness Center, even when we've started to see more open up or be willing to kind of explore that and address some of whatever challenges they're facing, their peers are following. And if we can create more opportunities and more spaces for youth like Jacqueline and others to do that, I really think that it's going to grow even more.
Thank you so much. Quickly, Mr. Superintendent, we're going to go to Thomas with our next question.
No, I absolutely love that this question, that this student is here tonight. And the bottom line is students drive the school culture, folks. The adults, we're just there to serve them, right? And as a student, you have such a huge impact on the culture of your school, and by modeling the type of behavior that you want to see with among your peers and stepping up and being brave enough to be a student leader and involve yourself. And it's cool to have pro-social behaviors. It's cool to help out your fellow students when they drop their books in the hallway. It's cool to pick up the trash and put it in the trash can. All those things are cool things to do. All you need to do is do it, and you'll be amazed that everybody else will be like, okay, I can do that as well. But I think students, the biggest thing that shuts that down is fear of what if. Well, what if I help that other student? What are people going to think about that? How am I going to be judged by my peers? And what I'm here to tell you is I honestly think that people just admire that, and they'll follow suit. So take a risk, take those fears on. We had a group of students last week at our Equity Summit, which, folks, we had like 390 people signed up for our Equity Summit here at HCOE. It was awesome. But we had a student panel. The most engaged group of the whole night were the students. Folks packed the room. They wanted to hear what kids had to say. So you have a lot of power. That's my comment.
Thank you so much, Mr. Superintendent. Round of applause. Thank you. Ma'am, the floor is yours.
Hi, my name is Mariah. I have a hard time focusing, but I can relate to this lady here about the high ACE score, also low protective factors, and I was really hoping to learn more about kind of what couldn't be done, and also like what an ACE score is. It just 8 questions? Do they include protective factors or lack thereof? But this was great to see, everybody working. I have a couple of quick points. One is I'm wondering if the doctor and I was very inspired by the YouTube video years ago, and I'm excited to see that you've come this far. And Dr. Polinsky from Stanford just had a book out called Behave, and found that same amygdala that grows and causes more sensitivity to fear apparently also causes people to be more empathetic. So I just want to throw out there that some of the people that are in the streets that are being thrown away may be like the redwoods and the forests that we're losing, because maybe we need more empathy and more pro-social, and some of those people maybe their amygdalas were a little stretched and their resources and their hugs a little short. And last thing, magic bullet, funding. This state had a surplus when the last governor left, and I've been very excited about some of the things the new governor's doing, but this country's priorities and shifting our priorities as individuals and a nation to fund, because when children see people laying in the street suffering, you can tell them anything you want, but they know where they could potentially end up if they or their families or their community falls. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well said.
I'm so glad that you mentioned the point that you did, because if I were to about the point about empathy, because one of the things that I don't talk about as much as I would like to, or especially when I have a short amount of time to talk, is that our ACEs are also the sources of our superpowers. I believe that really strongly. I think that and that is what the research supports, that folks who have experienced adversity do experience that deeper empathy, right? That remember that our stress response system was designed to save our lives from a mortal threat. And, one of the things that I say all the time is that as I was at a conference and someone told me once, Superman was an orphan, Superman was a foster child, Batman was an orphan, the X-Men were in a group home, right? And I think that is I feel like, number one, it's never too late, right, for us to be nurturing, connecting to those nurturing relationships that help our superpowers to blossom and reduce some of the long-term risks. So.
Thank you so much, Doctor. We're going to go to Anthony here in the back. Take it away, my man.
Thank you. What I want to talk about is I have a Karuk Native child, and he's a tribal member. We've been fighting him for 3 years, and he's not getting what I'm saying. He's not getting his culture. He's not going. The guardians are not taking him to his ceremonies or getting him to know the Karuk culture. The tribe. I want to know what's going to go on between the tribes and the not wellness court, but the judicial court down here for family courts. Is there going to be any kind of changing, or do you know any kind of change that's going to come up between the tribes and our children and our culture and this court system out here? Because Hendricks overruled everything that the tribe said. The tribe recommended him to come home. The CPS recommended for him to come home. The lawyers recommended him to come home. And then Hendricks says, no, he's not coming home. They're not lifting guardianship. I don't understand that. They're doing everything we're supposed to do, did the case plan, did everything, and it's still, he's taking from us. I'm fighting, I'm not giving up, but I'm still fighting again. But I want to know if there's going to be any changes between the tribes and the court systems out here, and if we're going to have any more say than what we do have, because we're just getting overrun.
Thank you, Tony, very much. All right. Who would like to be able to talk about Anthony's comment there and the concerns that he brought up? Someone's going to have to step up on this one. So we're going to go to Director Beck from Health and Human Services.
I can talk a little bit about the work that's happening. I know that at the time when we were talking about Family Wellness Court, the Karuk tribe wasn't able to join Family Wellness Court at that time, but we will be continuing to build relationships with all tribes, and not saying that that's just a process that we have to go through. We are just building relationships, and I know that Judge Heinrichs is very active in the wellness court. So I would like to connect with him and have more conversation about what his issue is about guardianship.
All right, real quick, Anthony, you want to have a quick comment? Or you just want to stand? So what we're going to do, Anthony, we're going to get you a card, and then we're going to connect you with Connie Beck here so that we can get that meeting established. Is that okay with you? All right. So Taylor is going to get Anthony a card right over here. Taylor, if you don't mind, just getting Anthony a card, and then Thomas, we're going to go to you for the next question. Oh, please, Erica.
I'm not a Karuk tribal member or employee, so I can't speak for them, but I can speak to say that I think what you've highlighted and a struggle that you're talking about is common. And I don't even know if everyone in this room knows that that's common. But I think that it highlights another component of what we're talking about here, and just all of the good work that's happening also has to be handled with a culturally responsive and appropriate way, especially when it's serving our children, and for our area in particular, and the historical trauma that exists here, which is a factor and a component of our ACEs conversations. It's imperative that it's part of the conversation that we highlight these implicit biases and everything else that comes with that, because there is definitely still institutional racism that exists in our county, and our families and our children are the ones that are falling because of that. So just pushing boundaries, and any providers or anybody in any of those fields, I just challenge you and our colleagues here that we're building partnerships, but to continue to push, because there are so many tables that tribes are not sitting at. And so I challenge you to make sure that there are tribes sitting there, because we're our best advocates for our kids. They're the future of our nations.
Thank you. Erica Tracy is on fire. I like it. Nice job. That was beautiful. Let's turn it over to Thomas.
Hi, my name's Fiona Murphy. I'm a high school student, and I was wondering what you're doing to combat the rise in nicotine addiction among teenagers in non-punitive ways.
Who would like to take that one? Who would like to lead us off on that? All right, Dr. Stockton, please.
I will say that it's not across the board yet, but there are a number of school sites that we're beginning to work with more science-based education about the harms, as opposed to targeting behaviors and punishing people for those things. So those are workflows that are in development right now, and there are projects that are being rolled out at different schools. It is unfortunately, I think, not at schools entirely across the county yet, but it is a work in progress.
Thank you so much. Mr. Superintendent, and then to the Surgeon General.
Yeah, there's a program that we run through the county that's out in the schools called the TUPE program that's been around since the beginning of time, but it's essentially, a prevention cessation program. And as far as I think your point, though, is really important, is around the positive behavioral interventions that come with being caught at school with tobacco in possession or using tobacco at school. And I think that's a conversation you should have at your school site with your administration and your counseling staff, to take a look at what are the cessation practices that are being put into place there, and what are the situations that those individual students are perhaps dealing with. And I think that goes back to the earlier student who asked, what can I do to help at my school? Sometimes it's just a matter of being brave enough to have these kinds of conversations and advocate at least for the conversation. The other side of the coin is sometimes schools are bound by education code and laws that they just have to follow. But sometimes in the middle, we can come up with some creative restorative practices to move forward.
Thank you. Surgeon General.
The number one driver for the rise in teen nicotine addiction is vaping. I'm going to say blueberry razzmatazz, right? As these flavored nicotine e-cigarette products are specifically targeting teens. And what we see is literally decades of public health gains in the reduction of teen nicotine use is being undone right now by the vaping industry. And so what we see is happening. We're seeing in the FDA, we're seeing with Health and Human Services, we're seeing departments of public health saying that, flavored e-cigarettes, number one, flavored e-cigarettes they're banning the use of flavored e-cigarettes. They're really limiting and looking at. I mean, we have to limit the availability of vaping products for kids. That's full stop.
Thank you. Quickly, Ms. Tracy.
Just to touch, because I don't know that anybody did yet on the punitive matter or not punitive, that is something that we've been pushing for in our district and really working towards, and I think that we are getting to a great place where we can do that hug that Marianne was talking about of wrapping around our families and our students, but that takes some creativity. We've visited different communities and places where, yes, there's ed code, and yes, there's these stipulations that we have to follow, and of course we will do that, but there's also creative leaders and people in power that have ways that you can maneuver that. So I think that that's also something that we're really working towards, and that I commend a lot of our people that are trying to do that. Because if it's solely punitive, they're still our kids, and that's really something that I have worked personally on with some of our children that are either facing suspensions or expulsions or anything like that. Especially in our region, we don't have educational options, right? And so if they're pushed out of a certain school or a certain setting, at the end of the day, they're still our children. So it's better to keep them in school however we can. And that takes some creative work to do that, but it's possible. So I'm glad that you were able to talk about the non-punitive, because I think that's huge and something that our kids really need.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tracy. We're now going to go to Constance for our next, we're going to go to our next question comment. And again, we have a lot of folks who are queued up who would like to be able to talk. So we're going to ask our panelists, who are doing an amazing job, lightning round answers as well. So here we go. So Constance, it's all yours.
I wanted to thank the panel for your presentations on the work that you're currently doing. And a theme I've kind of picked up on, and I think it relates to the CCRP stakeholder report, was that there was a call to action for us to de-silo our efforts. And what can our steps be in doing that? Including those that are out in this audience that are doing the work. How do we start working together? Because I think what's happening for a lot of us is that we're doing it independently and we're burning out.
Thank you. Let's go to Marianne Hansen. How do we break down those silos? And we're going to go to the Surgeon General. And then I think Superintendent Hartley spoke a lot about this earlier today. Marianne.
I'm so glad, Constance, that you mentioned this, because this is a community effort. We really have to be working together and looking for our partners outside our own workplaces. I can speak to the agency partnerships, which have been amazing over the last 3 years, the ways that folks have come together outside of their normal working groups. And so, how many meetings am I at with Connie Beck or Dr. Candy Stockton or Chris Hartley, because it's not just the early childhood realm the First Five is working in, and it's not just the DHHS box that Connie's working in. But I think that one of the things that we tried to do was support community groups to come together, and those were transdisciplinary groups that came together to talk about ACEs and what to do in their communities. And I think that that's a potential that we could bring back if there was interest in the community. So.
Thank you. Madam Surgeon General.
One of the things that I did when I was a pediatrician in practice in Bayview Hunters Point was my team invited the school nurses of all of the schools in that community. Once a quarter, we would just sit down and brown bag it and have a conversation about the needs of our students. And I think that having that FaceTime and really connecting with the people in our community and developing those relationships, that is the foundation for doing that cross-sector work and de-siloing. I think sometimes it feels like you have to have some big, amazing goal, but when you're caring for the same kids, when you're doing the same, when you're approaching the same challenge from different perspectives, oftentimes just establishing those relationships is really foundational in breaking down those silos.
Thank you so much. Mr. Superintendent.
It's awesome that you're asking, what can we do, as a member of your organization to help network? And I think that attitude is the first thing you can do in the relationship piece. I second that. But I encourage our team to broaden our network. So if I have a problem or a situation that needs to be addressed and I've got my typical path of flow chart of who I go to, we're really trying to broaden our network to other agencies, and so that they make that Rolodex, they make that email list. And that by problem solving and working on projects, what we find is a lot of times we pick up the phone and it's nobody in our organization, it's you, because we had an experience with you and you delivered something that we've never been able to experience before. So that would be my first thing is broaden your network, whether it's through a social situation. We actually have a group of people from Humboldt County right now at a Breaking Barriers conference. And that conference is designed to bring multi-agency people together to go train and learn together so that when they come back home, they've got that network that they've created.
Thank you so much. If it's all right with folks, we're going to go to 2 comments, 2 questions for the other rooms. And I just want to do a quick time check. We're approaching about 8:10. And would it be all right with folks? I want to make sure that we go for about another 15, 20 minutes. We have a lot of folks who want to be able to ask questions. We also have some folks who are needing to roll out. But okay, about another 15, 20 minutes? Okay, all right, checking in. So a quick comment from the other room, witness firsthand, not having enough trauma-informed staff and teachers and how it impacts students. We need to work hard to have more trauma-informed staff at school, which I know is a really big issue. This is coming from Ashley. Any lightning round comments to what Ashley just said about being trauma-informed at school? Do I hear an amen?
Amen.
All right. All right. Thank you so much. I'm going to go to we need trainings for parents. This is another comment. We need trainings for parents and providers for kids diagnosed with autism to better understand their everyday life and necessities. Any quick comments on this one from the panel?
I think our regional centers can help to provide those supports.
Thank you so much. Ms. Hanson.
I think that Rebel Coast Regional Center offers phenomenal services to families, and I also want to acknowledge the work of Special Beginnings through the Humboldt County Office of Education.
Thank you. This is a question for question number 3 on the ACE survey. Why does it state that in order for sexual abuse to count as an ACE, that the person who committed the abuse needs to be 5 or more years older? Madam Surgeon General.
That's a great question. I don't know why. Not every ACE survey has that, so has that stipulation. So I'm not certain if that is perhaps in the survey that you're referring to that was developed that. It was looking at a reference to a statute or some. There's some. I recognize legal statutory language about if you're 2 young people who are having a sexual interaction, so the difference in age that requires it to be statutory. But I don't know. This is not part of every ACE screen, so this is an interpretation, I think.
Thank you so much. We've had a couple questions on birth control. Are we doing anything to make long-term birth control readily available to women with substance abuse issues? Dr. Stockton.
So I would say that in our county initiatives, we strongly push programs that are providing substance use treatment to be addressing issues of contraception, because we do know that access to contraception can be an issue in this county. So yes, we are integrating that recognition into every substance use treatment program in the county. When we roll out our trainings to different sites, that is one of the areas that we really highlight as important.
Thank you so much. Anyone else on this one? All right, let's go to Thomas there for our next question. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Forrest. I'm an HSU student, and thank you very much for being here. My question for you all is that when you're implementing these trainings with parents, educators, healthcare providers, what are some of the most common misconceptions that you've run up across about these ACEs, or what sort of hiccups have you experienced implementing policies and trainings?
Who'd like to be able to take that one? All right, we have a caucus of the panel right now. We're going to turn it over to the Executive Director, Marianne Hansen.
I think that in my experience anyways, there's just been a basic understanding of what ACEs is and how impactful they can be on long-term health. And so, folks just really wanting to dismiss the importance of those early years. And of course, remember, I've got the first 5 hat on, and folks say, oh, but if something happens when you're little, you don't remember it. And that's not true. Your body remembers it, right? So I would say that's the most common misperception that I encounter.
Thank you. Dr. Stockton?
I would say the other thing that we run across is we have a tendency to cast blame and create victimhood. And so we look at ACEs as something that parents do to their children instead of something that's experienced collectively by the family. And it's really important to stop blaming.
All right, we're going to go to our next question, comment, and this is Jennifer.
Good evening. Thank you, Dr. Bird, for being here, and Senator. I just had a comment, actually. I wanted to first express gratitude for all the work that's being done in just the past 3 to 5 years in Humboldt County specifically. And I wanted to also emphasize the healing that we should be doing as individuals and continuing to do that because we're asking our children to heal, but if we can't provide safe, supportive spaces and examples that that's possible and that's recoverable to do, how can we expect them to go forth with their own healing as well? I'm hearing that you guys are going to be providing or developing supportive family services with the funding that we've gotten here. I can't wait to see what that looks like, because when we heal as a family or through relations, that's the most transformative approach to healing. I'm just really excited about that and just wanted to emphasize that please don't give up on your own individual healing and prove not only to yourself but to your children, to our youth, to our future, that it's possible, that we are resilient, and it's not linear, it's continuous throughout our whole life. And oftentimes when we are dealing with traumas, we're thinking that we're healed and it's having things pop up for us, and it gets scary, so we back down, but we need to push through and be the example for our future, for our children.
Thank you. Madam Surgeon General.
In response to this and the last comment, the last question was, what was the biggest misconception? And I think the biggest misconception is exactly that somehow we're broken, right? Or the biggest misconception is that this is not solvable, or that we can't, if we open up Pandora's box, it's going to be this big, terrible, scary thing, and so it's better to not talk about it or keep it closed. And I think that the point that was made that it's a lifelong process, and we can heal on an individual level and on a community level in families, and as a community as a whole. I think that is what the research and the science shows, and that is a thing that brings me into this work so hopefully every day.
Thank you so much. Anyone else on this one before we turn it over to Thomas for our next question? All right, Thomas, if you don't mind standing for us just so we can get you on camera, I apologize.
My name is Lisa, and I am a teacher in this county, and I feel that the largest group that has access to these students or these children are our teachers, our monitors. They're the ones that see them the most out of all of these groups here today who do wonderful things for these children. As a veteran teacher a few years back, I evacuated my classroom 42 times. I had a toolbox that was full of tools for me to use as a teacher in the classroom. And I expended all of those tools. I reached out for help, and you still have the learning of the whole being changed and having to slow down and stop because of what I used to think was the few. And the reality is it's not the few. That few is a large group in those classrooms of kids that have these ACEs that are affecting them. And so when I hear wonderful things that the credential programs are picking up new teachers and those spots are being filled and we have people that we want to try and entice to this county, let's start with the teachers on the ground today. Give those veterans teachers tools. They need help. And it's not just, I need a walkie-talkie in my room so I can access help. It is training. It is extra bodies on campus. There's a lot of things that can be done to help the safety of every student on that campus. So what can we do for our schools?
Thank you so much. Let's go to Erica Tracy, then we're going to go to the superintendent.
That was a realization that we had as well, because we know that teachers are at the forefront and you have the children for upwards of 8 hours a day or more. And so because of that, that has been our approach. We have been trying to reach as many teachers as possible, provide training opportunities even in the summers, which of course it would be awesome to compensate for the time in those trainings or at the meetings or sending off to trainings. But I think that that also highlights where superintendents come in and school boards, because if you don't have that leadership at the top to make the time for the professional development days, to make the time to find new substitutes so you can participate in those trainings, that is an obstacle that we have faced on a few different occasions. So I know that it's hard, but I think that that's really where, if we have leadership driving and providing the supports to the people on the ground, that's how we're going to see the fastest change possible.
Thank you so much, Ms. Tracy. Let's go to Superintendent.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing your experience and your story. And I was at a meeting last night with other superintendents, and one of the superintendents was sharing exactly the same experience that his school is going through this week. He's had a classroom this week where they've had to do the all clear. I think that's what you're referring to, where you literally have to remove all of your students because one student is absolutely out of control and is in harm to other people. And that they've had that in their school several times, in the course of the week. And his question is, what can I do? And so there isn't an immediate answer. Training is certainly that. Awareness is certainly a big part of it. But I do believe that our understanding of ACEs and how we can understand what our students are going through, the program that I think we spoke about today at lunchtime is called Focus. Focus is a program that's done in Stanislaus County where law enforcement can do a report basically that they went to a particular house and that there were children in that house and that there was some level of trauma that happened. That report gets sent out to schools so that the schools are aware that Johnny and Jill had a rough night. You don't know any other information, but when those students are coming to your school, you hug them, right? You find out what's going on. You don't just send them to class and ask them to learn. And so communication tools like that, having more opportunities to give students counseling and be aware of what they're going through so that as the teacher, you're not trying to do your curriculum and do your instruction and also deal with these really serious emotional issues.
Thank you so much. We're going to go to Ruth here next. Then we're going to turn it over to the chairperson from the WEOP tribe. We're very grateful the chairman is here. We're going to do a couple more questions from the other room. Then we're going to do 2 final questions. And then we're going to ask our panelists for a quick closing statement. Ruth and everyone else, thank you for your patience. Thanks for hanging with us.
Hi, I'm a Bear River tribal member. I just wanted to ask, I know that with the youth, they get misunderstood because of their indigenous culture. So how can we get our teachers to get that understanding so that when they are acting out, they can connect with them on that indigenous level?
Thank you so much. So Ruth was talking about cultural competence, and especially in the classroom. Let's start with the superintendent, and then we'll go to Ms. Tracy. Madam Surgeon General, do you want to chime in on this as well? All right, please.
Well, I think you just said it, Senator, developing cultural competence and the fact that we need to broaden our professional development with regards to our local culture and understanding the nuances around that and what the practices are, and not try to just apply traditional philosophies around the simplest things like holidays to everybody. And I do believe it just begins with just understanding and learning from each other, but opening the door and changing our philosophy and our mindset around what is seen as traditional in the school system.
Thank you. Erica.
I am a strong proponent of community-based education, which means the community needs to be in the classroom. If you are serving in a community where you're serving tribal students, reach out to the tribes, figure out what tribe they belong to, connect with them on that level. There are so many misunderstandings, you're absolutely right. And a lot of those oftentimes lead to tension, lead to acting out, lead to then punitive decisions, all of these different things. But I think it goes right back to those relationships that we keep talking about, because if those relationships are made, then you have a better connection and understanding of where your student is coming from, no matter what background they're coming from. But it's really on the teachers and the site administrators, and to make that a priority. Again, it's really just how are you going to prioritize, how you're going to interact with your students and the community. So just reaching out to the tribes and making that door open to be able to connect with the students and give them a reason to want to come to school. We need to keep them in school.
Thank you very much, Madam Surgeon General.
I think there's also this really powerful intersection between ACEs and race and culture and ethnicity and background, where when a young person from certain backgrounds exhibits kind of the same symptoms of having experienced ACEs, and I think that we recognize that in our society today, depending on the background of that child, they might be treated very, very differently. And I think that that is an intrinsic and fundamental part of this conversation when we're talking about ACEs, when we're talking about what we're doing as a society. The fundamental piece of this work is talking about it in the context of the historical trauma of racism and discrimination and disproportionate responses to the same type of symptomatology that's shown.
Thank you so much, and thank you, Ruth. We're going to go, absolutely. We're grateful that Mr. Chair, the floor is yours. Thanks for hanging with us.
So how am I Ted Hernandez, tribal chairman for the Wiyot tribe. First, I have to say welcome to our beautiful Wiyot lands. And I'm happy to see all the educators here and people that want to make the future for our children brighter and better. But I have one comment, and Erica, I'm going to get to you later because I want to talk to you about your program. But if you guys call the tribes, we'll be there. That's all you have to do is call us, and we're there. We have the traditional lawyers to help with the children. You just have to call us. We want to be on the panels, but we get forgetting, all, like Erica said, they don't call us. That's the important part. Have us there with you, and we can help you. We can move forward together. Like they say, it takes a village to raise a child. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Absolutely. And we owe a debt of gratitude to the leadership of the Wiyot tribe, the Wiyot people, for moving forward this year on this groundbreaking transfer back, finally, to the Wiyot people on the island. So congratulations, and thank you for your amazing work, sir. We would like to go to our next question from the other room. Advocates for children whose custody was in question in foster care. Today, there is no advocacy for these children in the court. How can this be addressed? As they're making the point that those kids who are in the foster care system have some of the highest ACE scores. Madam Surgeon General.
Yeah, I think the CASA program, the Court-Appointed Special Advocate, is a program that is specifically designed to ensure that kids can have an advocate, especially in those situations.
Thank you. Anyone else on this one? Please, Marianne.
I would just encourage folks to contact CASA and volunteer, because the capacity of our local CASA doesn't meet the need. And so if you're looking for something that you can do, contact CASA so that you can be a court-appointed special advocate.
Thank you so much. This is coming to us from a therapist. She works with many adults, many of whom have high ACEs. What can they do to be able to make their lives better, and where can they go? Who would like to be able to, please, doctor?
So one, I would say, talk to your doctor, right? So that's an important piece. But I think that there are multiple pieces. The thing that I mentioned earlier about sleep, exercise, nutrition, mindfulness, mental health, and healthy relationships. I think depending on what the particular manifestation or issue is for the individual. I mean, it can be, as a therapist, it sounds like the trauma-focused mental health interventions are critically important, like trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy or other trauma-focused therapies along those lines, and then overlain with other interventions. For example, if someone is experiencing issues of substance dependence or, for example, alcoholism, right? It's connecting with whether it's AA or other of those group services that recognize that foundational piece of adversity and support the individual in all of the pieces of the steps that need to take, supporting community. I think I've seen everything from folks getting support from from their religious, from their faith community, with that, you know, for some folks, they're on that basketball team, you know, all of those pieces add up to support health and well-being.
Thank you so much. Anyone want to take this? All right. We're going to go to Thomas, and we have time for about 2 more right after this.
Thank you so much for taking my question or my comment. I wanted to let the community know in a networking way that I'm a co-coordinator of the 0 to 8 Mental Health Collaborative, and we have been for the last 12 years providing free and low-cost trainings in the community around early childhood, infant, family, early childhood mental health. We have over close to 500 people on our network. We have 70 leaders in this community on our leadership team network. We are open to have more community, family members join us in talking about trauma responsive services, ACEs, trauma responsive care. And one of our main objectives is really to see everyone who touches the life of a child and a family as that person that provides that social and emotional support. So we welcome any discipline, anyone to the table, and we really want you all to be dosing the day of a child and their parent with that oxytocin that Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris was talking about. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Dr. Burke-Harris, anything you want to comment on that?
Yes.
Hey, I like it. All right. Thank you so much. We're going to go to our second to last question, and we're going to turn it over to Sarah. Thanks for hanging with us, and thanks for your patience.
No, thank you guys. I'm just a regular community member, but I am also a leader of children's ministry at our local church. And I'm just wondering if you have any specific tips or steps that churches can be taking to help continue the hug to end acts in the children and the community.
Thank you. Surgeon General.
There's a group called ACE Overcomers, which is a faith-based ACEs advocacy group, and they have lots of great models, and I think they have a curriculum for what faith-based communities can do. Yes, ACE Overcomers.
Thank you. Anyone else on the panel? All right. We're now going to go to our final question of the evening. Please, ma'am, if you don't mind standing for us and give us your first name. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Anna. While I'm now happy that we have a scientific tool to measure ACEs, and it is a benefit to finally be able to define ACEs to start the conversation, this is a question for the clinical setting. I'm concerned that the ACEs screening may turn into a perfunctory conversation with providers that have little follow-up with patients. How do already overworked clinics make this less generic? We already have so little access to our providers. By having so many conversations, I am concerned that it may diminish and normalize trauma if there is no follow-up.
All right. Dr. Stockton? Let's turn it over to Dr. Stockton.
So I'll be honest, that's a concern I have as well. I will say, though, that for those of us providers who are heavily engaged in this conversation, we're already in, and that won't happen with us. And for the rest of the providers in the community who are maybe not up to date on this, sometimes the strongest way to change a clinician's practice is just data, right? So if you have providers that are resistant or saying this isn't really an issue, this doesn't affect my patients, I don't see those kids, sometimes just making them see the numbers is so important to change the way they think about what's happening. So I go into this knowing fully that not everybody is going to embrace it with their whole heart when we start, but it's still an important step towards actually changing the attitudes of the clinicians who will be working with our children.
Thank you. Doctor?
I 1,000% agree with what was said, and also recognize that as we are working to develop the clinical protocols that are being deployed by and recommended by the state, listen, yes, maybe not everyone may embrace it with their full with their whole heart, but we are definitely putting into those protocols best practices for clinicians to establish that level of trust, to do trauma-informed care, and recognizing that it doesn't just come from, it's not just about that one individual conversation that the provider has in the office with the patient. It's about clinical transformation for trauma-informed care. And I hope to be leading that and setting the vision for that as California's doctor, as the Surgeon General of California, and the CEOs of all of our major hospitals and all of our health systems need to, as we're laying this out, we are setting into all of this training and all the protocols and all the work that's happening across the state. And this is included in the group that I've convened, where we have the leaders of all of the major medical centers and providers and training group, provider, doctor training groups, is that we are sending the message, hopefully from the top down, that this is not about a checklist and then moving on to the next thing. This is about transforming care so that it can be truly trauma-informed.
Thank you so much. All right. We're going to go to closing comments from each of our panelists. But before we do, we owe you a debt of gratitude. We have been here now for 2.5 hours, and you have been incredible. And as we said in the beginning, we're going to say at the end, we're making progress because all of you in this room. And we want to say thank you very, very much. And we're making progress also because First Five, who has taken this on and pushing it forward. Marian Hansen, 1 minute closing comment.
I love that he gave me time. It's hard to sum up my feelings looking out at all of you right now. This is, Dr. Burke-Harris talked about sort of setting the tone from the top down. And then the other piece of that is from the bottom up, which is our community, the people who are here in this room, our families, lifting them up, supporting them, and holding folks accountable for leaning in to structural racism, leaning into families who aren't getting services that they need, leaning into language justice and making sure that we're supporting immigrant families in our community, leaning in for our children and our families. And so all of you here give me hope that we can continue to lean in to this issue and wrap those children, wrap them up in hugs from multiple people and caring individuals in their lives, and change our systems so that Humboldt is leading the state of California in being a trauma-informed, caring, compassionate, and committed community. So thank you very much for being here.
Thank you so much. Great job. We so appreciate you. Thank you very much, Sanson. We're going to turn it over to Dr. Stockton for a closing comment.
I would say that without being blind to the many challenges and areas that we do struggle in and where we're not meeting the mark, to be proud of the work that we are currently doing and use those successes to build even greater successes in the future. And just that final shout out that this is so easy to lose focus and blame somebody, a family member, a parent, a community for failing, and to think of it that way. This is a labor of love and compassion and support, and this is how we need to approach it for everybody who's affected by ACEs, the children that they are now and the adults and members of our community that they will someday become or already are. So,
thank you so much, Dr. Stockton. Very grateful. Director Beck.
I'd like to thank Senator McGuire for bringing us together tonight, Marianne and Dr. Burke-Harris. I so appreciate you being here. I do believe that you are the reason for so many folks in the room, and so I can't say enough for that. I did want to touch on two things. I heard a couple of different times today the need for more culturally appropriate services. DHHS recently did a request for information, and we received 5 requests that could do this work. And we plan on funding all 5 of them. So there will be additional services that will be available. The people that responded are individuals and tribes that are willing to do the work in their communities. So I wanted to shout out to the tribes for that. I'm very excited about that. And then also we have a number for resource available. It's 267 DHHS. We used to say that, but now we can't use the letters anymore because everyone using cell phones. So the number really is 267-5716. So if someone's not sure who to call, please call that number.
Thank you. Thank you very much, and very grateful for that. Thank you, Mayor. We're now going to turn it over to the superintendent.
So, real briefly, to see you still all here at coming on 8:45, I feel super humble, And as far as closing comments go, I'm just inspired by the power of our community, and even more believe in the relationships that we build. Allows us to think from an abundance perspective instead of from a scarcity, what we can't do. The fact is, if we kind of throw fear to the side and we join hands and we think creatively, we can do a lot of stuff. And I learned a lot tonight, sitting here with these amazing colleagues and hearing your comments from the audience. And I was inspired by the young lady that's a high school student that asked what she can do for her school. So that's my takeaway tonight. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Let's go to Ms. Tracy. Take it away.
I, first of all, also thank everyone for being here and for the opportunity to share in this work. I do strongly believe that Humboldt County can definitely lead the way, and I think a lot of the work that we are doing is also very inspiring and exciting, and something that I truly see working towards healing, which is what I hope we all eventually get to. Even on the system level, right? Like that eventually our systems that are in place and our organizations that are in place and our schools and all of these different programs or places that operate transform from not only trauma responsive, but to healing. And I think that we're well on our way. So I think that that's really exciting. One other thing that I wanted to highlight, because I forgot to mention it earlier, is that our logo, and it was on our
Stand up. Erica, stand up for a second so folks can see.
And you'll see them around the audience.
Stand up.
So our logo is a heart with our French word with the sturgeon-back design through it. But the words that are around it is actually "I love you" in 3 tribal languages that our community serves. And so that was... The artist was actually here earlier, and I think she may have left, but that is really the driving force of what we're doing, is trying to share love, spread love, love our children, love our community, and really empower them to move forward and grow into healthy individuals and leaders of our tribes. And because of that, and why I wanted to highlight the language especially, is because that's what culturally responsive trauma responsiveness can and should look like. We're looking at, we do check-ins in our different programs, and we have different songs in early childhood like we do, but the ways that our ACEs and trauma responsiveness efforts happen the most organically are when we're doing things that are in line with our traditions, our culture, our languages, and we're using that perspective to translate all of these things. So just be mindful of that, I think, going forward, because that perspective is what's really going to make it click for all of our leaders, all of our children, and hopefully really make a sustainable, lasting impact for our families.
Great job. Thank you. Thank you. Madam Surgeon General, close it out.
Thank you, Senator McGuire, and thank you to all of our panelists and all of you for being here this evening. The question from the high school student also resonated with me, and of course, after I answered, then later I was like, oh, I know what I should have said. Last year, I was in Scotland, where they invited me out to come and speak at the Make Scotland the First ACE-Aware Nation conference that they had. And when I was there, I met a young woman. She was 18 years old. She was in a wheelchair, and they introduced me to her, and they said, this is the woman who is leading the National Youth ACE Awareness Movement in Scotland. And as we had a moment to chat, she said to me that she had experienced 9 out of 10 ACEs. And she was in a group home. She was really shut down. And then her therapist showed her my TED Talk that I had done, this young woman in Scotland. And somehow, some way, it just clicked for her. And she went from thinking that there was something wrong with her to recognizing that not only was she not broken, right, but all of the challenges and struggles and experience that she had, she now knew where they were coming from. And she took that information, that transformation, and created the Youth ACE-Aware movement in Scotland. This 18-year-old woman. We are powerful. I never imagined a decade ago when I started going down this work, or when I got up on that stage to do that TED Talk, I prayed, oh, maybe if, 1 million people see this TED Talk. 6+ million people later, right? There's transformation. We are powerful. But this is long work. And everyone in this room knows that this is difficult work. And that's why the self-care, caring for ourselves, caring for each other, taking time to take a moment, take a break, take a step back when we need to, and then come back to the effort with renewed energy and invigoration. Because it is going to take all of us to do this, you guys. And as my doula said to me as I was pushing out our youngest, as I was like, I can't do it, she said, you are doing it. We are doing it right now. And it may be a little painful sometimes, but the outcome, where we're going to, it's absolutely worth it. Thank you all for sticking in this hard work with us.
Ladies and gentlemen, California's Attorney General, Dr. Nadine Burke-Harris. We want to end it here with some very quick thank yous, because tonight would not have been possible without some instrumental folks. We want to say thank you to Thomas and Carlene, and to Carrie, and to Tay, and to Andrea and Tom, who have been working so hard from our office. If we can give them a round of applause, please, and say thank you very much. Marianne Hansen and her team at Force 5 have been instrumental. Thanks so much. And gentlemen, we're going to be back with you next year with our next update on the ACES initiative. Thank you for being here. One more round of applause for our Surgeon General and our incredible panel. Thank you so much for attending tonight and for your partnership.